Alright, today we're playing Flight Simulator and we're looking at the new Flight Sim Stuff throttle prop mixture flight controls. I just got this for my birthday and let's unwrap it and see what we got. Okay, so first things in the box is a USB Type B adapter cable, and then it looks like we've got a desk mount. And this is all 3D printed, and actually this is a very nice 3D print. I do a little bit of 3D printing, and the detail and layers and fit and finish on this is actually quite impressive. Okay, and now we've got the actual throttle prop mixture adapter, and this is well packaged. So we can see all the bubble wrap. Okay, so that was well packaged. It was not going to get damaged in shipping. And I gotta tell you, this is very nice. The finish on the 3D printing on this is very smoothly done. There's a lot of fine details that printed out really nicely. So you can see I got the version with the trim wheel, and then we've got throttle, and we've got our prop, and we've got a mixture knob, and on the end we've got flaps. And this is exactly what the 172M that I fly looks and feels like. We've got our desk clamp adapter, and that just slides right in there. And again, the fit and finish on this is just amazing. Okay, so let's get this all set up and let's get loaded into Flight Simulator 2020. Okay, so the throttle is connected, and let's go into Flight Simulator setup. We're going to click Options and over to Controller Options. And here we can see our device interface, and that's going to be the throttle TPM setup. So now we need to select All so that we can see the different controls we can assign. And we want to go down to Power Management. And now we're going to do throttle, and I'm looking for throttle 1 axis. There we go. And now we're just going to select the input, and I'm going to move that throttle, and boom, it's selected. So now we can validate that. And I just save a new setting, whatever the default is, and yes, the throttle works. Okay, so now onto the next axis. I'm going to set up propeller. There we go. And I'm going to go down to propeller 1 axis and just do the same procedure. And I'm going to move the propeller rod, and boom, it found it. Okay, so now down to validate. And that looks like that's working. So now let's set up the mixture. Looking for mixture 1. Okay, and it looks like there's two options. Mixture 1, 0 to 100, and then minus 100 to 100. So I'm looking in the instructions, and the instructions say that we want the minus 100 to 100. Okay, so I'm going to move the mixture rod. And okay, that's set up. So let's validate that. Okay, yeah, that seemed to work. So you want the minus 100 to 100. Okay, next up is the control surfaces, and I want the flaps. So now there was two options. I can set to extend the flaps continuous, which I feel like that might be how the Cessna might be, where you just hold down the button and it keeps extending. But I'm looking in the instructions and it says to go with extend flaps and retract flaps. Okay, so I'm going to click on that, and I click the extend flap button, and it found it, so let's validate that. And then we'll do the same for retract flaps. And there we go. Let's validate that. Okay, and now our next surface is going to be trim. See, I don't see trim there. No. Okay, where's trim? Oh, trim surfaces, okay. And then we want elevator trim. And it looks like we got elevator trim axis minus 100 to 100. So let's put that in, and then I'm going to turn the trim wheel. And, oh, yep, okay, I got it. So it took a little extra turning there. Let's validate that. Okay, so yeah, now you can see that the trim wheel, it was already up a little bit. So a lot of people are saying that it'd be nice if there was a trim indicator on here. That seems kind of complex, but it'd be awesome if they put it on there. So another thing we could do is just put a paint mark for where trim takeoff is, or where the center trim is. But we'll just have to try it as is. Let's go ahead and load up. We got the Cessna. So this Cessna is most like the one I fly, and this is the one that I intend to use the throttle with. So let's select that, and then let's choose an airport, and well, we'll just go with Coeur d'Alene since I'm familiar with it. And we usually take off runway 2. So we will set that as departure, and I also need to make sure it's a daytime flight so we can actually see what's going on. There we go, and let's fly. Okay, so we're in the cockpit now, and let's look around, and let's test out these controls and see what's going on here. Okay, it works. Oh, you know what? That's backwards. And there we go, throttle, and oh, yep, that is backwards also. So I need to go back in the controls and reverse that. Okay, let's hide this yoke and let's see, do the flaps work? Up, down, down, down. Yep, okay, that's all good. And let's hide this other yoke and let's see the trim wheel. And there we go, yep, trim wheel works. Okay, oh, that is cool. That's cool the way that moves while I'm turning this. Okay. Well, I need to go and reverse the throttle and mixture, so no, you can't do it from this window. Okay. Okay, so back into controller setup, and let's find this, power management. Now, I didn't even realize these were already set to reverse. I'll bet you guys saw it and didn't tell me. So let's turn off reverse on those, and let's save that. Yeah, that seems like it's working. Let's save that, and let's go back and test this. Okay, there we go. Now they're working properly. So now let's go ahead and zoom out and let's give this thing a shot. All right, release parking brake. And here we go. I'm going to try to hold center line here. Don't judge me too much. I'm just kind of, this is our first flight with the new simulator. And you're seeing it as I'm doing it, so we just kind of loaded in here at Coeur d'Alene. And we got liftoff. So Coeur d'Alene's already at 2,500 feet, so
I can pull the mixture back a little bit. And that's kind of a normal procedure for us at this airport. Okay, and I'm setting the trim, and something's wonky. You know what? The trim's backwards too. Okay, let me fix that. Okay, and there we go. Yep, now the trim is working properly. Oh, wow. That's so real feeling to be able to set that trim with such a fine adjustment. Yeah, just to be able to trim for a speed, and that's way better than messing around with the buttons, even on the Honeycomb Alpha, the electric trim. That's just got a way better feel to it. Okay, so we'll just fly a pattern around here, and that the landing will really give us a feel for the trim and the throttle. Okay, so this is just awesome because I can use the trim to set my speed, and that just feels so much like being in the real airplane. And then I can just use power to adjust my altitude. And I gotta tell you, this makes the flight simulator feel so much more realistic. It's so much more like I'm flying a real airplane. The way I can just glance at these instruments and be able to adjust. Okay, so we're coming up a beam the numbers. Let's pull power back. And we'll get trimmed out here, put a notch of flaps in. Okay, let's start our turn. We'll put another notch of flaps in, and I didn't start at traffic pattern altitude. And actually now I realize Rome 2 uses right pattern traffic, so we're all wonky here. I'm getting distracted by the new TPM controller. Okay, let's put power in. We're gonna need some power. Make it to the runway. And there we go. Oh, that feels so cool. Just to be able to pull that power back like that. Okay, and we'll set it down. Okay, not the best test, but man, this is so cool. I'm really looking forward to playing with this a whole lot more.
Okay, so that was our first flight around the pattern using the Flight Stuff TPM controller, and I gotta tell you, that just upped the realism so much. That's probably one of the biggest things I've ever had that upped the realism in Flight Simulator.
When I first started flight training, I had the Logitech and the joystick set up to match a Diamond Eclipse, and this actually worked really well to kind of simulate the motions and movements, and just for practice for my flight training. And then I moved on and got the Honeycomb Alpha, which also added a ton of realism for a Cessna with all the switches and the key. And the yoke just felt so much better than flying with a stick when you're simulating a Cessna. And the kids love it too. We have a lot of fun with it. About a year ago, I had an idea to print a TPM adapter for the Logitech throttle, and it really didn't come out well. The throws were too long, and ultimately it just broke.
Having the honeycomb yoke was a big upgrade too, but it just never quite felt right with that Logitech controller. So big shout out to Sean at Flight Sim Stuff. That controller is awesome. You saw how easy it was to set up, and that's using Flight Simulator 2020. One of the things I noticed while I was playing with the controllers is that this surface right here is going to make an excellent mouse pad. However, I think it's because of the sheen of the 3D printed, it's kind of at an angle. The mouse kind of has a tendency to track on that angle. So I'm definitely going to be looking for a mouse pad to stick on there. And I think that adds a little bit of a benefit too, so that you're not having to reach around the controller. You can have your mouse right there on the controller. And I still use the mouse for looking around, setting zoom, and obviously for picking your runway and setting up your aircraft and other flight simulator controls. I'm really excited to see people out there home brewing this kind of stuff, especially 3D printing it and home brewing it. I showed you the example of what I tried to 3D print to come up with a Cessna style TPM, and it was just a disaster, not usable. Eventually it broke in my hands while I was trying to use it. It didn't feel real. This has a proper friction to it, so it feels real. The flap switch feels good, trim wheel's good. I cannot recommend this enough, especially at this price point. Okay, you can pick up the Flight Sim Stuff TPM controller over at flightsimstuff.com. They've got all the different models. They even offer a change so that you can swap out the propeller knob for a carburetor heat knob. I considered that, but the carb heat really isn't a big deal for me. I use it in the aircraft and I don't necessarily need it for the simulator. But if I had to make one change to this, it would probably be to go ahead and make it a 4-knob system and just add the carb heat in as an optional 4th knob just to make it more inclusive. But it's really not a big deal. I've used Flight Sim without the carb heat, forever, and I still remember to put carb heat on in the aircraft. He does make them with and without the trim wheel, so you can actually get it a little bit cheaper. However, if you in any way want to use the trim wheel and flap controller, you gotta get it. It's only a little extra, and he's not charging anywhere near what Redbird and some of the other brands out there that make the Cessna style TPM controls. So I hope this review helped you decide if the Flight Sim Stuff TPM controller is right for you. And if it did help, go ahead and give me a like and a subscribe, and we'll do some more Flight Sim stuff in the future.